Hey guys, Peter here to tell you about the latest from Brymir, Voices in the Sky, out August 26 on Napalm Records. The album has 11 tracks, 50 minutes in length, and this the band's 4 full-length studio album. They are a Finnish symphonic death metal band. Let me start off by saying that I love the way they built this record. Every song feels like it's in the right place with the right characteristics in order to allow the listener to have this incredibly smooth and seamless transition from song to song. An album that has 50 minutes, it feels like it has 35 because that's how enjoyable it is. That's how the journey is put together. Everything happens easily throughout this entire record. You don't feel like you have to work your way through. There's not a song that you need to skip to get to a better track because the album is very compact, is very balanced from that perspective. So a really well crafted, really well designed album, and in my humble opinion, everything starts with a song that opens and the song that closes. Voices in the Sky is the opening song, All As One is the closing track. These two songs have very specific characteristics that allow them to introduce you to the record and then close off the experience of what it is to go from the first to the last song. There's still one more track after that, but that is a cover of Dark Funeral, so it really feels like a bonus track. It feels like it's out of the paradigm of the construction of the record, so you really have to look at Voices in the Sky, the opening track that sets the ball in motion. It sets you rolling, it gets you excited about the prospects of not just listening to that song, but then listening to every single thing that the album has in store. And then All As One, a song that offers a sense of finality, a sense of closure, the credits coming down, this cinematic journey that you've been on, because it feels like a cinematic journey, has ended. I love this construction. Now, in between these two tracks, you have a lot of mobility, you have a lot of fluidity. It's a very dynamic, it's a very fluid record. There aren't really clear pauses within this album, but when you're moving at this speed, when you're this much into it, when there's this much intensity, when there's this much aggression, heaviness, melody, you honestly don't want pauses, you honestly don't want breaks. You want to have this continuous motion, you want to feel engaged, you want to feel like the ride is never going to end, and that's exactly how this album is put together. Now, sound-wise, the record continues exactly where Wings of Fire left off. This album feels like a continuation, a sequel, if you will, to that record. A lot of the things that they brought to the table with that album in terms of the soundscape, in terms of the experience, the mixing, the overall production, a lot of that stuff, it's still there on this album. They didn't really reinvent the wheel or decided to go in a completely different direction from where they were before. They rather just add a few new elements, a few small pieces here and there in order to better create an album, in order to allow this record to feel like the continuation, but at the same time still feel like it is its own record. It's a little bit more of a mature sounding album. In my humble opinion, there are better ways to define an album, and they found those better ways on this record. Wings of Fire was a great album, but it needed a little bit more polish around the edges. This one has those elements. It feels like a better defined album, even though it still has this bombastic, epic sound experience. This epic sound experience still allows itself to be better defined, to have better borders, better starting points, better finishing lines. Every single song has a sense of beginning, middle, and end, and then the overall album offers you that same kind of experience. So overall, I feel like they took everything sound-wise that Wings of Fire did extremely well, and then they just tweaked some fine details here and allow this album to move them forward but upwards at the same time, as far as the sound quality, as far as the vocals, as far as the overall product is concerned. Now, within that sound, you have to talk about the symphonic elements, you have to talk about the drums, and you definitely have to talk about the guitars. The symphonic elements on this album really help make the album sound bigger, but unlike Wings of Fire, I felt like they were better included in the overall soundscape. They didn't feel as much as a driving force, but rather something that works in parallel with everything else that is happening. And because of that, they still have the same sort of impact, but they don't take the impact away from the drums, guitars, and vocals. So it's an album that has better definition as far as the symphonic elements and the impact that they have in the sound and in the atmosphere. The drums have a great heaviness on this record. I love the sound of the drums throughout. sometimes just thundering, coming through, very powerful, really moving the album, really moving the sound, but incorporated really well with a more melodic side that the record offers. It creates this perfect balance of melody and heaviness. They're almost the go-to, the connector that allows the guitars to be melodic and heavy, and then connects the guitars, the melodic side, the heavy side, with the symphonic elements. The drums are a little bit of the in-between, connecting these worlds, allowing the record to never really lose track of itself sound-wise, to never really fall apart at the seams. Everything is tightly packed together, and the drum sound plays a huge role in creating that experience. Last but not least, definitely the guitars. This feels like a more guitar-centric album. Not to say that the previous records were not guitar-centric, but because of the impact that the symphonic elements had in Wings of Fire, the guitars didn't feel like they had the same flair. They didn't feel like at times they had the same power, the same fire, at least not on a consistent basis. This record offers them a little bit more consistency, offers them a little bit more parameters to work with, and because of that, you're allowed to better experience their sound, their impact into how the songs were put together, and in how you're going to drive yourself through each and every single track. The solo sections are phenomenal, always adding value to the songs, bringing a little bit of the two worlds of the band, the symphonic side and the death metal side, bringing them together, bringing some old school flavors into it, allowing them to be an explosion of melody, an explosion of force, but still keeping some of the bite, some of the fire alive and well in those solos. Everything surrounding the guitar work on this album, it has a better shape. It feels like it has a more clear path. The whole album has a more clear path, so it's not surprising that the guitars also feel that way. But it's definitely giving a better impact on the experience. It's definitely making the album sound better, feel better, and allows the record to have more of a driver and not necessarily rely on something that should be there to complement the sound like the symphonic elements are. Now, as far as vocals are concerned, Victor is phenomenal. I love his tone, I love his delivery, I love what he does. He has a great tonality, and he has the ability to always keep up with what the song is doing or where the song is going. He has a great voice. He adds a lot of heaviness to the sound. He adds a lot of heaviness to the overall sonic experience of the record, and he always delivers. He's very consistent in his delivery. He stays within the pocket, but for an album that has so many moving pieces, that has so many textures, so many layers, so many ups and downs, moving from the symphonic arena to the death metal arena, then moving into the melodic death metal arena, back into the symphonic arena, like this album has constant movement, expanding, contracting sound-wise. So having him be a little bit more consistent, being a little bit more linear, doesn't hurt at all. It actually helps the album. It helps create a little bit of a red line that stays consistent from start to finish. In addition to that, I really like the choirs on this record. Sometimes in the past I felt like they overused the choirs, or they came in perhaps at the wrong times, but on this record they always felt right to me. They always felt like they were there to add volume, to add that epic nature to the songs, to increase the impact that the symphonic elements are currently having. You have these great elements, but it's like any other recipe. You may have the best condiments in the world, but if you don't know how to put them together, things don't really work as one. In this album, I finally feel like everything is working as one. Victor's vocals, the choirs, the guitar sound, the drums, perhaps the more subtle impact of those symphonic elements, the design, everything is in the right place, which makes this album super strong all around. When you look at Wings of Fire and you look at this one, while some of the sound experience might not have increased that much, the changes may not be drastic, the overall quality of the product definitely is miles ahead of where it was before. As far as favorite songs are concerned, I want to start off with Forged in War. Heavy and intense in the verses, the drums and guitars rip through, just absolutely power demolishing. Then the chorus has this symphonic sound that allows the track to just levitate. The choirs in the chorus enhance that symphonic sound. It really makes the chorus epic. It has this symphonic beauty to it that allows everything to come together as one. This track also has a great solo that adds beauty to the beauty that already exists in the track. It enhances the melody of the track, and it really showcases Brymir. If you take Forged in War and you show it to somebody, this is what Brymir is all about. You have the symphonic side of the band, you have the death metal side of the band, and you have those two sides coming together in one single track. You're able to see the two different worlds, but then you are able to see how those two worlds can be merged as one. Great track all around. Next you have Landfall. The choirs on this song are phenomenal. It really gives you a sense of brotherhood, of reaching new land, if you will, just to go with the topic of the song here. I love how they start off, because they're going to be predominantly impactful in the chorus, but the song kind of starts off with the chorus, so you start off with those choirs. Really interesting way of getting the track started. It already feels larger than life, and you're just getting your first steps into it. Now after that, the song starts to morph, it starts to grow, they start to add pieces, they start to add textures, they start to add layers. The track, that first verse is really about building, the song sound-wise, vocally, musically. Everything about the track is all about evolution, at least in those first few steps. Once that's become ingrained into the DNA of the track, then you start to see the differences between the verses, between the chorus, a little bit more of a direct, heavy approach in the verses, over the top, symphonic, bombastic, epic, whatever word you want to use in the chorus in order to really bring it all the way up. The choir's hitting that chorus really hard so that you have this sense of unity, you have this sense of a hymn, if you will, in the chorus, very different from the more traditional, perhaps death metal, straightforward sound that you're going to get in the verses. But magnificent style, magnificent approach, merging those two worlds perfectly well, creating ebbs and flows within the song, making it feel more dynamic and more fluid. Last but not least, Seeds of Downfall. Very similar to Landfall. These two tracks have a lot of similarities in the sound, in the execution, and how the song is structured, where you get the choirs and the chorus. Both songs offer a little bit of that, a little bit more linear in the verses. Both tracks have a little bit of that. So there's a lot of similarities between these two songs. What changes is that the song feels a little bit more vocally dynamic. It feels a little bit more stagnant. Sound-wise, there's not as much of an abrupt change between the verses and chorus as Landfall has, even though it's still there, but it doesn't feel as drastic. But the vocal changes, the dynamic vocally that this song offers, really adds a different flavor. It really changes the feel, the perception. You have to peel the layers to see how similar these two tracks are. But once you listen to them, or you're just going through them, they feel completely different just by changing a few elements around the corners. I still enjoy the choirs. I feel like they use them really well throughout this entire album, enhancing the experience, enhancing the symphonic elements, enhancing the epicness of the song, specifically in the choruses. And these two tracks really represent that perspective, or that style, really well. This is it, Brymir, Voices in the Sky, out August 26th on Napalm Records. Let me know your thoughts on the band, on the singles. Use the comment section below. I'll be reading those and getting back to you. Take care, guys.